What is up? Good morning and welcome to Monday's Hangxiety. We are here to recap week 5 and commiserate in our fantasy football failures. You may notice it's a different look for the show. For the first time ever, maybe second, I am riding solo on a club fantasy show. Both of my co-hosts are affected by last hurricane or next hurricane, and I'm in upstate New York enjoying fall. So I wasn't going to leave you guys hanging on a Monday morning. It's going to be just me by myself this go around, but we're going to have a lot of fun with it. It's going to be a train wreck. We all know that if you've seen me do a show at all before, let alone by myself. I ramble, I talk fast. I'm going to do my best to get to every one of your questions, and I still have a show sheet I have to get through it. First, let's talk about our partnership with Trophy Smack. End of the season's coming up, everybody. If you guys are looking for gifts for your commissioner, something to give the loser of your league, but certainly something to give the winner of your league, make sure you check out Trophy Smack and use our link. It's in the description of this video, Trophy Smack /WOFF for all of your needs. Help your commissioner out. Like I said, make fun of the loser of your league. Make sure you guys are doing that. It's an easy way to help club fantasy out. Good morning, Caesar. First one in the chat. Hope you're having a good Monday so far. Hope Sunday went well for you. It wasn't a terrible day for me. As we get started, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the scores from this past week. We go all the way back to Thursday. What a Thursday night game. Primetime Kirk Cousins delivers 36-30. The Falcons take down the Buccaneers. The London game, not quite as exciting. Second bad game in a row for the Jets. The Vikings win this one 23-17. Aaron Rodgers left that one with an injury. Well, didn't leave, left, came back. We'll talk about that in a second. Bears put it to the Panthers and proved they made the right choice with quarterbacks and that trade 36-10. They beat down Andy Dalton, the Panthers. Browns are still a train wreck. Commanders win that game 34-13. Dolphins and Patriots are both a train wreck, but apparently the Dolphins are less so, and they should have a quarterback in a couple of weeks. They won against New England 15-10. Jaguars 37, Colts 34. Joe Flacco giving us one of the best games of the week to keep an eye on there, and we finally got to see good Trevor Lawrence. This game kind of disappointed. I was a little shocked to see Josh Allen even come back into this game after it looked like he was unconscious, but the Texans beat the Bills 23-20. Ravens, what a game in overtime, 41-38. We had some really good games this week. That overtime game in Cincinnati was nuts. Broncos did what they were supposed to do, 34-18 against the Raiders. Raiders are just in bad shape right now, and now they have a new quarterback. Cardinals 24, 49ers 23. Check on your 49ers, friends. Not a great week. Giants go to Seattle and win 29-20. That's a good win for the New York Giants. Packers handle their business against the Rams 24-19. And after a long delay, which my old ass did not stay up for, if you guys know me, you know I'm an old man and I barely get to halftime on the Monday night game, let alone when it's a long rain delay or a lightning delay. 20-17, the Cowboys pull it out over the Steelers. Josh, I appreciate you. Hope you're safe. Josh, I probably shouldn't tell people this, but I'm going to. Josh sent out his distressing email about how he's going to have to evacuate and he's spending the week in a hotel in Miami. I'm like, that doesn't sound like the bad thing that you're making it out to be, my friend. So enjoy your vacation, motherfucker. While some of us are sitting here talking about week 5 football. If you guys have questions, go ahead and drop it in the chat. I'll do my best to get to it. Basically how I'm going to try to run this show today, because it's honestly the first show that I'm doing a full show sheet by myself. How I'm going to run it is I'm going to pay attention to the show sheet and then come back over and check for questions, and then pay attention to the show sheet and check for questions. So it's going to be a little back and forth. We're going to have a lot of fun with it. Let's start with 21st birthday shots, rookies with big games. I'm trying to leave out some of the people who've already had big games, but there were 6 guys that I think jumped off the page, and we need to start with Tyrone Tracy. 129 yards, 7.2 yards per carry. Coming off of a game where Devin Singletary just let everybody down. We thought he was going to cook against Dallas in week 4. It just did not happen. He had 24 yards on 14 carries. I think this has to mean a bigger role for Tyrone Tracy. More on him a little bit later. A lot of the rookies worked their way into the show sheet as well as this. Caleb Williams, 304 yards, 2 touchdowns. If you watch the game, he actually had a rushing touchdown called back as well. I think I'm remembering that correctly. He's the QB 6 so far on the week. Bo Nix, 206 yards and 3 total touchdowns, plus an epic fight with his own head coach on the sideline. No turnovers, which is huge for Bo Nix. That's something that we've been waiting to see. He likes to put the ball in the other team's hands. It did not happen in this game. He is the QB 8 so far on the week. Very predictable outcome. Brian Thomas Jr. continues to just feast. More on him later on in the show, but 5 for 122 and a touchdown. He's gotten better every week of this season. Go check out his stat lines. It looks like big things are on the horizon for Brian Thomas. Another Josh favorite here, Jordan Whittington, 7 catches for 89 yards, the current wide receiver 15 on the week. Looks like he may be taking over while the Rams are figuring their wide receiver situation out. And you know I had to get Brock Bowers into the show sheet. I've been telling you guys he's the tight end one forever. He goes 8 for 97, scores his first touchdown. But more importantly, on the first play of the game, I think it was as soon as Red Zone had cut to the 4 o'clock games, it was Brock Bowers taking it for a touchdown. He's the tight end 2 on the week so far, tight end 1 in our hearts. So we're happy to see these rookies get everything together. The chat is out here giving support to Josh. Josh said it's not a vacation. Caesar says be safe. Charlene says be safe. Caesar said there was a lot of good games yesterday. Gator's in the chat. And Gator said Whittington's been a gem. This was I want to give Josh credit. If we go back to week 2, I think it was week 2. Josh actually went pretty heavily in on Jordan Whittington. He liked Tyler Johnson, but he said, keep an eye on this Whittington kid. And then he kind of talked himself out of it. And now he's back onto it. So I think Jordan Whittington is one to watch. Josh had a really good stat last week where Whittington's target share had only been matched by Cooper Kupp in week 1. So it seems like Matthew Stafford is really starting to lean on the kid. Reminder, guys, if you guys have questions, I will get to them in between segments. Or if you just want to commiserate about how bad yesterday was, though I have to say, it's been a rough season. There's no denying it. Week 5 is starting to bring some normalcy, and maybe I'm just saying that because it's probably the first week where I won in more leagues than I lost, though I did take another tough L in Scott Fishbowl. I'm not real pleased about that. Also, things we cannot be real pleased by. This is the unnecessary shot of Rumpelmans. These are the key injuries for the week, and while it didn't necessarily affect the superstars the way previous weeks have, there's still a lot of them. Devin Ashane left the game with a concussion. Jalen Wright looked pretty good coming in for him there, so we'll be interested to see how they handle. I believe they're on bye this week, Miami, so it'll be interesting to see how they handle the running back situation. So we're not going to have to worry about Devon Ashane this week at all. Aaron Rodgers dealing with a low ankle sprain, which is much better than a high ankle sprain, but he's also a 40-year-old man with terrible legs at this point. So I don't think any ankle sprain is going to be a good thing. It's going to come down to how he manages his swelling, but he's not going to miss any time. And if I'm remembering the schedule correctly, the Jets chose not to take their bye after their London game, which is weird. So I believe we're going to see the Jets this week. Xavier Legette left the game with a shoulder injury. Rhamondre Stevenson actually took a hard hit to his leg. You may remember he was supposed to be benched this week. Didn't happen, it looks like. I don't think he started the game, but he certainly played well, played through the leg injury. He says he doesn't believe it's a long-term injury. Nico Collins leaves the game with a hamstring, did not return for the second half, which sucked because he was having a good game so far. He had 2 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown. We'd have loved to see what Nico Collins could have done in that game otherwise, but unfortunately, he went out. Same kind of situation for Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones wasn't quite as good as Nico Collins, but he went out in the London game with a hip injury. The team's being kind of vague about it, probably because they were in London, so they need to get back to the United States. But they're saying they're hoping it's a short-term injury. That's one to keep an eye on. They are on bye this week. They have Ty Chandler there. And then Jake Moody, kickers are people too. Jake Moody goes for a tackle on a kickoff and injures his ankle. It's looking like a high ankle sprain. He's actually been a pretty good kicker for fantasy at this point. And you're probably not going to have him for the next 3 to 6 weeks before anybody asks. I don't think any of this crowd will. Yes, you drop your kicker. Don't waste an IR spot. Don't do anything else. So make sure you guys are looking for a new kicker if you were relying on Jake Moody. I'm seeing the chat is just interacting, talking about keeping safe during the hurricane. Make sure you guys are doing that. I'm going to keep rolling through the show sheet, guys. I'm a fast talker. This is probably going to be a fast show, but again, we didn't want to leave you guys hanging on this Monday morning. We call this segment the shot of espresso, and Josh and Jay put in some picks. So I'm going to read off their picks, read off some of their great stats, and then talk a little bit about mine. Josh made sure we wanted to talk about Jamar Chase or Joe Burrow. I think he ended up putting Chase on the thumbnail. We talked about putting Burrow on the thumbnail, but regardless, Jamar Chase goes for 41.3 fantasy points, 10 catches for 193 yards and 2 touchdowns, and has 10 career touchdowns of 60 or more yards. That's the most of any player before the age of 25. He was previously tied with Odell Beckham. Hopefully he doesn't go the way of Odell Beckham in 5 years, where now he's the 3rd string guy for Miami, and you don't even realize he's coming off of the waiver wire, or IR rather. Brian Thomas Jr., what a week. 23.2 fantasy points, 5 catches, 122 yards and a touchdown. He's clearly the wide receiver 1 for the Jaguars offense. And it seems like it's only going to get better. I haven't had a chance to dig deep into it this week, but one of the things that I liked about Brian Thomas, you guys probably heard me mention this last week, is when I was updating my projections, you could literally see Gabe Davis's usage going down and Brian Thomas's going up. That seems to be where it's going for. And if you remember last year, while Christian Kirk had his good games, Calvin Ridley was the wide receiver one in Jacksonville. It seems like that's the type of player that Trevor Lawrence wants to lean on. And I think Josh has it right. I think it's wheels up from here on out because Brian Thomas seems to be that new wide receiver one. It'll be interesting to see what he looks like when he and Evan Ingram have to coexist. But right now, we don't have to worry about it. And Brenton Strange found the end zone again this week. So there's still room for the tight end to flourish. Bo Nix, 23.1 fantasy points, is Josh's third pick. 206 yards, 2 touchdowns, 9 rushing yards. And it was like 8 carries for 9 yards. So that was a little bit weird. But 9 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. First Broncos rookie quarterback to win 3 games in a row. Think about that, because John Elway has always been the benchmark for Broncos rookie quarterbacks. They always want to think back and compare people to, I mean, not even just Broncos rookie quarterbacks. Until Andrew Luck, John Elway was the benchmark for rookie quarterbacks. And all of a sudden, Bo Nix is the first to win 3 in a row. I haven't been able to dig into the story, but if you guys haven't seen the clip, it's going all over the internet right now. He and Sean Payton went at it on the sideline after just a series of like bad plays and miscommunication, but they pulled out the win, and obviously he's looking real good. Gator throughout the rookie quarterbacks is one that he wanted to talk about. Williams, Daniels, and Nix, all 3 have started from week 1. All 3 have winning records. They are combined 10-5 after 5 weeks. It's pretty incredible what we're seeing from these rookies. It's funny. I saw a post yesterday. I believe it was our good buddy Kevin Coleman who said, did the Bears still pick the wrong quarterback? And I think it's safe to say I don't think they did. This is now, I believe, Caleb Williams' second 300-yard game. The kid looks really good. Bo Nix is doing exactly what we expected him to do. We think that Bo Nix was the perfect quarterback to come in here and run Sean Payton's system, and he's doing it. Obviously, they're butting heads a little bit. And then Jaden Daniels, this was his first bad week as far as completion percentage, but say what you will about Cleveland. They're no absolute joke on defense. Definitely forced some bad plays out of him. He almost had an extra rushing touchdown, but what I love about watching Jaden Daniels play is he runs very effortlessly. That's a hard word. But long story short, while he still doesn't slide, he was able to work into the sideline, get himself out of bounds before he took a bad hit. It's one of those things that you like to see, the wherewithal of a rookie quarterback. For my 3 picks, I wanted to go all the way back to Thursday for my first pick. Kirk Cousins, 509 yards, 4 touchdowns. I could not confirm this morning, but I thought I saw a stat that Kirk Cousins is the first player ever to throw for 250 yards in each half. So I thought that was a really cool stat to look at. And like I said, 509 yards, 4 touchdowns. Don't quote me on the 250 yards thing, but I swear I saw that somewhere. But after 2 weeks, I think Falcons fans were worried. If Millie's in the chat, he can elaborate a little bit for us. After 2 weeks, I think Falcons fans were worried because we hadn't seen Kirk Cousins, but he's starting to get it going. And more importantly, Drake London and Darnell Mooney are thriving. Darnell Mooney, if you watch that game, he is the perfect complementary wide receiver to Kirk Cousins. Even Kyle Pitts didn't have the worst game ever. A little bit more on that later, but you love seeing what you saw out of Kirk Cousins on Thursday night. I got to watch the London game. I was doing a little work in the morning on my projection, so I got to sit there and watch the entire London game. And I was giving advice about Garrett Wilson during the London game. And I said, what you're seeing them force the ball to him. And you like that when you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers who can force the ball. It was ugly, but it worked for fantasy. 22 targets. He caught 13 of those. So right away, catch percentage, not exactly where it is. But if you actually go and look at Garrett Wilson's history, he's like a 55% catch guy. So 13 out of 22 is kind of on par with what you should expect. Only 101 yards is probably the more concerning number, but he did score a touchdown. 7.8 yards per catch is kind of laughable, but the fact of the matter is this: fantasy managers do not care. 13 catches in PPR, that's enough to make a good day right there. 101 if you're in a league with a 100-yard bonus. Perfect. Throw that 6-point touchdown on the top. All we have to hope for now is that Davante Adams does not fuck this up, plain and simple, because Davante Adams going to the Jets, it could absolutely ruin everything. The report on Davante Adams, I don't think he made the show sheet at all, is that he feels like he'll be healthy enough to play in week 6. I have a feeling he was probably healthy enough to play in week 5, but I'm no doctor. So we could see the trade market heating up. The Jets have to be interested. We're gonna see how that all plays out. But we saw a touchdown out of Allen Lazard. We saw a pretty big catch out of Mike Williams in this game. I don't know if the Jets see this as necessarily a need, but one of their needs is probably keeping Aaron Rodgers happy, and Davante Adams would certainly do that. Tyrone Tracy is going to be my third pick. I remember back when we did our summer preview show, when we got to the Giants and we had to do our sleeper pick, I said Tyrone Tracy, and our host, Joe Zolo, literally thought I made him up, did not know who he was as a person. But that is a person that I was able to get at the end of a lot of rookie drafts this year. He's on probably so many of my taxi squads right now. He's got to have earned some part of the starting role. He's going to be a big part of our waiver show tomorrow, which is probably just going to be me as well. So if you enjoyed this show, get ready for another run tomorrow. And if you hated it, go ahead and take Tuesday off. Devin Singletary this season has 221 yards and 3.9 yards per carry through 3 played games. Tyrone Tracy just went for like 129. He has 20. Oh, wait, hold on. So, sorry, my apologies here. So do you want to know how important TDs are and PPR is for running backs? Tyrone Tracy has 27 more rushing yards than any other running back this week. He leads the NFL by 27 rushing yards going into the Monday night game. He is the RB17 in fantasy because he caught one ball for 1 yard and did not find the end zone one time. So as good of a day as it looked for Tyrone Tracy, very efficient as the full-time running back, it was not that great for fantasy. Might make him a buy candidate because I think people are going to be scared by Devin Singletary coming back. This first week wasn't the best week. If Tyrone Tracy is in your dynasty leagues and you're running back needy, it might be worth throwing an offer out there for like a third. They probably landed him for a fourth or a fifth. Might be a fun one to take a look at. Let's jump into the chat here real quick. Joe Ortiz jumped in early on in the show. Grabbed Tucker Kraft last minute from waivers. Played him over Isaiah Likely. He dropped Evan Ingram for him. Super stoked. Likely had a hell of a fucking game too. Let's not take back what Likely did. But Tucker Kraft was my stream of the week at tight end. I'm not going to tell you there wasn't an enormous smile on my face the entire time I was watching that Packers game. It feels good to get it right with a guy like Tucker Kraft, who was available in 50% of leagues after waivers have run. And obviously Joe Ortiz was able to grab him literally before his game started. I was an asshole in the leagues where I had to stream. I had this thing for Eric All from the Bengals. He had caught 4 catches in each of his last 4 games. And so I was like, oh, Eric All's about to break out. So even though I told everyone play Tucker Kraft, and there was another guy I can't think of as well that was Brenton Strange. Whenever you hear Evan Ingram is out, Brenton Strange is a good play. But I didn't start either one of those guys. I started Eric All and got 2.5 points out of him. So I feel really good for people like Joe Ortiz who were able to benefit from Tucker Kraft in the stream of the week pick because Tucker Kraft looks really good. There were some naysayers because the Packers threw the ball 54 times in week 4, I believe it was. So they expected to see Tucker Kraft's volume come down. But yeah, I guess you also can't expect that Romeo Doubs is going to get suspended. Christian Watson's going to get hurt. You can always expect Christian Watson to get hurt. And then Caesar, first week, he had to start Higgins in London and they blow up. How awesome is that when you absolutely don't want to start the players you were? What's funny is I was in a similar situation with the Higgins where I had him in and out, and I cannot remember who I was choosing between, but it's just one of those things where very fortuitous. I don't know that I would bench Drake London at any point. I feel like no matter what the situation is, I think he has Kirk Cousins' eye, but T. Higgins was an easy one to ignore. And he got all of my Eric All points this week. So congratulations to T. Higgins for finally looking like he is the real wide receiver 2 there in Cincinnati, though. Andre Yoshivas didn't have a terrible game either, if you guys have been following along there. We're moving on to the hangover, guys. This is the biggest head scratcher of the week. And again, Josh went ahead and made a pick for me. I don't know where he put it. Jay said he was going to talk about Joe Flacco, and I do not see Joe Flacco in this spreadsheet at all, Jay. So I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I just saw the rookie quarterback thing, but apparently we just don't care about Joe Flacco unless I missed it somewhere in the spreadsheet. But again, we're going to move on to the hangover. And Josh said the fact that Deshaun Watson is still starting for the Browns. And there was a tweet by Kevin Stefanski, or a quote by Kevin Stefanski. Certainly not a tweet by an NFL quarterback during the week, but a quote by Kevin Stefanski where he said he is still our quarterback. And it almost sounds like he's just following ownership's marching orders at this point because Deshaun Watson just looks lost out there. That is something I've been saying, honestly, since he came to the Browns. If you watch them play, 90% of the good shit that Deshaun Watson does, it's improvising because he just looks lost to me. There are times where I see him looking completely at the sidelines and not downfield, and he gets turned around a lot. And obviously their offensive line is not great. But the long and short of it is he looks like a confused player. And I wasn't going to bring this up on any of our shows. I saw a quote a few weeks ago, and I don't know if this is true. So again, take it with a grain of salt. But when it's a show by myself, you know damn well I'm just going to sit here and I'm just going to sit here and say whatever the hell I want to say. I saw a quote where Tom Brady was apparently talking to Bill O'Brien, and essentially they said that Bill O'Brien had to run the exact same playbook for Watson that they did at Clemson because he doesn't comprehend playbooks well. Again, I don't know if it's true. Just one of these things I'm throwing out there because Kevin Stefanski does have a little bit of a tougher playbook, and it seems like Deshaun Watson is not translating well with it. And again, it's just not looked good. This team looks checked out. This is directly from Josh's quotes. This team looks checked out. No one has any faith in Deshaun Watson. And I think that's an enormous thing to say. And then Josh ends it with, give us Jameis or give us death. And I think that's really interesting on what Jameis Winston could do for this team. We've kind of seen it with Carolina with Andy Dalton. In essence, we may have seen it with the Indianapolis Colts and Joe Flacco. But with Cleveland, I happened to cover Cleveland for Football Guys during the preseason. And that team has latched on to Jameis Winston. At least they had during the preseason. They loved his leadership. Jameis Winston's mentorship and leadership got more discussion than Deshaun Watson's did during the preseason. And a lot of that is because Watson, they were still worried about how he was rehabbing his shoulder. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see. Jameis Winston is a guy who could take over that locker room. And Jameis Winston, you have to understand, if you've only watched football for the last 3 years, 4 years, you don't remember Jameis Winston is a guy who can sling this football. He had the notorious 30-30 season in his last year with Tampa Bay. And this is a guy who could take advantage of the tools at his disposal. Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, assuming he's healthy. They should get Nick Chubb back, I'm guessing this week, but that's going to let Jerome Ford and he split some time. And I think we could see some good efficiency out of their running game, but none of this is going to work if they don't get better play out of the quarterback position. And I don't just mean I mean, you have to not look like an asshole out there. And Deshaun Watson looks like an asshole out there, plain and simple. For me, the biggest head scratcher of the week was this 49ers offense. And what was weird about it was their very obvious attempt to get Brandon Ayuk the football. Brandon Ayuk, at one point, Brock Purdy had 144 yards and Brandon Ayuk had 124 of those yards. And you can't convince me that Arizona just took Deebo Samuel out. Deebo Samuel finished this game with 1 catch and 3 carries. Juwan Jennings, 1 catch for 13 yards. Jordan Mason, 1 catch in the passing game for a team that tends to throw to their running backs. So to me, this screamed that their game plan was, let's get the ball to Brandon Ayuk. And this is their worst offensive scoring output of the season because they actually had a defensive touchdown in this game. So the offense only scored 17 points in this game. Very, very ugly. Not what you want to see. And is this the cause or the effect? Forcing the ball to a guy who hasn't looked that great. Maybe that's not exactly what you're going to do. Great for fantasy managers. Fantasy managers are rejoicing that we're seeing better football out of Brandon Ayuk, but it's not going to be great for the 49ers offense. And what I truly think this means is it's probably not going to happen again. I did not get to watch the entire 49ers game, but what I will say is Brock Purdy had 2 turnovers in this game, and Brock Purdy is notoriously a guy who protects the football. He hasn't looked great this season, but he's usually better at protecting the football than this. Is again, cause or effect. Did he have 2 turnovers because he was forcing the ball to Brandon Ayuk? I need to go back and look at these picks and see if they were passes to Ayuk. But the offense just didn't feel right, and then you lose to the Arizona Cardinals. I did want to point out when I look at the other side of the ball, it was a pretty solid game for the Cardinals, but not one singular carry for Trey Benson. He had been a 6 touch per game guy up to this point, and they just chose not to get him involved here. I don't know if I missed that he was out, but literally James Conner and Kyler Murray were the only ones who handled any rushing here. So this is a little box score watching where I don't know what happened with Trey Benson. This was a guy that's smarter people than me. We had Jagger May on the show a few months ago, said he's probably the most pro-ready rookie running back. Obviously, that was Tyrone Tracy. Jagger was wrong. But anyway, Trey Benson did not touch the ball in this game. And I went back and kind of looked at his carries in the games that matter, in the games that are close. They don't give Trey Benson the ball a lot. In the blowouts where they got their asses handed to him by the Rams a few weeks ago, Trey Benson handled 9 carries. So I find it interesting to see that Arizona may not trust Trey Benson the way fantasy football managers want to trust them. And then this is a good head scratcher. Justin Fields outscoring Josh Allen. Josh Allen is in a tough situation without a wide receiver 1. We've kind of alluded to this on the show. It's easy for the team to be like, we don't need a wide receiver 1. It's starting to look like they do. Great touchdown by Keon Coleman. He may or may not have stepped out of bounds. Who the fuck knows? But the long and short of it is, it was I believe his first touchdown in the NFL. They did not have Khalil Shakir this game. I I am blank. Houston focused on shutting Dalton Kincaid down. Dalton Kincaid, he's actually going to come up a little bit later in the show. Good target volume, wasn't allowed to do a lot with that target volume. So this was really a Keon Coleman game, and they straight up did not have anybody. And this makes so much sense, Joe. If the Bills aren't on the phone, I don't know if they can afford him. If the Bills aren't on the phone for Davante Adams, they're making a mistake, and they owe Josh Allen an apology. The other thing I'm noticing is Josh Allen, when he gets to the sideline, looks pretty pissed off about a lot of stuff right now. And I think part of that is like this offense needs a wide receiver one. So again, Davante Adams makes so much sense. But they're going to need to do something. And then obviously the Bills are probably going to get investigated this week. Josh Allen looked unconscious on the field, leaves for a fucking play, and then runs out of the medical tent to get back onto the field because they still had the ball. Very weird chain of events. And Adam Hutchinson, who writes the injury report for Football Guys, mentioned you could still see Josh Allen go into protocol this week. There's plenty of time for him to get out of protocol, especially since he came back into the game. But with the way we're trying to protect quarterbacks and the way you've seen Tua Tagovailoa jeopardize his life in your same division, doesn't seem like the right call that someone didn't pull Josh Allen back and protect him from himself. And Smitty jumps in and says Purdy admitted that he locked into Brandon Ayuk too much in the game. And it was pretty obvious watching the game that's exactly what happened. Even the announcers were shocked at how much of the workload that Brandon Ayuk was getting. But again, while it's great for fantasy, it's not something you want to see for the 49ers in the future. And then it's going to be interesting to see. They need to start winning these games. You don't want to see the 49ers have a situation where there's no reason to bring Christian McCaffrey back. For managers like me who have been waiting on Christian McCaffrey to come back, you need this team to win games and not make bad decisions like they did this week. But yeah, Brock Purdy, calm it down there, my guy. We don't need to yeah. His decision making was full on concussion. So yeah, it was not the best the handling of Josh Allen and his head health. Before I move on, Hunter says since Chubb is back, he was offered Ford for Waddle. He has Waddle. I'm a full on sell on Waddle. I don't think Nick Chubb is going to come back and take the full workload. Nick Chubb has done next to nothing. He did only individual workouts during the preseason. He obviously got onto the PUP list. He's back in practice this week. He looks strong. He's cutting. Still only individual workouts. So there's a good chance he's not even back for week 6. I think he might be, but more than likely week 7, where we're going to see Nick Chubb. This feels fair for Waddle. The fact of the matter is this. They're going to get Tua Tagovailoa back week 8, if I had to guess. And in that situation, Waddle might have a little bit more value than Jerome Ford. But if you're in a running back situation, I'm good with this trade. I don't have an issue moving Waddle for just about any working piece. If you watched the show at all last year, Josh and I used to get into massive fights all the time about whether Jalen Waddle was underrated or overrated or exactly who he says he was. And I think he's kind of shown us he's a wide receiver 3 in fantasy, even when Tua does play. Right now, he's barely that. The Dolphins are barely a good team without Tua Tagovailoa. And again, we talked about this last week. Shame on the Dolphins for not getting a decent backup quarterback when you have that weapons that they have. But I'm fine with taking that trade if you're in a running back situation. I think there's probably a little bit more value for Waddle out there, but Jerome Ford is a good back. And Jerome Ford, if you remember last year when Nick Chubb was healthy, Jerome Ford played that Kareem Hunt role where he handled all of the passing work. And I meant to say when Nick Chubb was out, Jerome Ford handled the passing work while Kareem Hunt handled the running work. It's almost exactly what's going to happen when Nick Chubb comes back. Nick Chubb, though a good pass catcher, the Browns just refuse to use him that way. Nick Chubb is going to be the primary runner, and Jerome Ford is still going to hold some value in a PPR league. So again, not a bad trade whatsoever. If you're in running back, if you need running back help, that's a trade I'm willing to make. We're going to move on to the section we call cream or sugar. This is our buy low, sell high. Cream rises to the top. This is going to be your buy low candidate. Sugar is they're going to fall to the bottom. You want to sell these players. Josh gives us Tyreek Hill, and Josh kind of gave me an idea for mine. Tyreek Hill is the wide receiver 25. Josh says ignore that next to his name. He's probably frustrated his managers, and that's what makes him a buy candidate right now. The Dolphins have a bye in week 6, and then Tua is likely back in week 8. And I think the bye in week 6 is where you have to attack this. You have a pissed off manager who now has a clogged roster spot. They're going to sell Tyreek Hill this week if they're going to sell him at all. If you can wait out a bad week 7, you're likely going to get real Tyreek Hill from week 8 on, assuming Tua Tagovailoa can stay healthy. We had a ton of Tyreek questions last week where people were trying to sell him and it almost felt like for peanuts. And we were saying, you don't want to, you don't want to just give him away. You want to make sure you're making the right decisions for your team. And so now we're saying buy him. And it kind of sounds counterintuitive because we were kind of saying sell him last week if you could get something good for him. But the fact of the matter is this: we saw the shitty offers last week and people seem to be accepting them. Make some shitty offers of your own and see what you can get for Tyreek Hill. Josh is going to jump in here and say he's fine with moving Waddle, obviously, but he says Ford ain't it. His role's already been diminished, and that's before Chubb coming back. I'm going to just mildly disagree with Josh, as I always do. Josh doesn't like Jerome Ford either, and I don't have an issue that Jerome Ford is just a guy, but in PPR formats, I think there's probably something there that we have just been shitting on this Cleveland offense the entire time. So maybe I'm talking myself in circles here because all I've been doing is talking for 30 minutes. However, I don't hate Jerome Ford the way Josh does, but Josh kind of hits on the point I was trying to make. And that is, this feels more like a fair trade, and I don't like fair trades. I like to win every trade. So maybe look to move Waddle for another running back or get Ford in another piece if there's something on that roster that you like. So I mildly disagree with Josh, but Joe Ortiz 100% agrees with Josh. So I'm already getting picked on by Josh and Joe, which is my normal Wednesday. And then George Cook has a question for us. I assume this is George Cook. George C. Do you drop Tracy or Whittington for Kyle Pitts? Holy shit. They have Ferguson, but Pitts has hit waivers. No, you don't need Pitts. I assume this is not Dynasty. You don't need Pitts. The trade value, no. Pitts has already been on waivers. Your league knows he's already been on waivers. There's not going to be the trade value you think is going to be there. If I'm dropping one, I'm dropping Whittington. I don't drop running backs, and I think Tyrone Tracy is going to take over. Kudos to you for being ahead of your league and having Tyrone Tracy already. If I'm dropping one, I'm dropping Whittington if you really think there's a trade market. But if this is a 10-team or fewer league, I don't think there's going to be a trade market for Pitts. 12, you might see something. 14, I think there's a little bit more value. The smaller the league, the less value there is in Kyle Pitts, and you have Jake Ferguson. Though Ferguson is on bye this week, I believe. So you may actually need to get a fill-in anyway. So maybe Pitts for Whittington is the move to make to get your fill-in. I'm going to get to questions after I get to the sell here, which is Kyle Pitts. So this kind of makes sense. Josh's sell. He says he'd be willing to sell Pitts for Tucker Kraft right now. And I think all of fantasy football would agree with that. And he wonders if there's some name value in Pitts' name where you might be able to get Kraft plus. So again, Josh says there might be some value there, but in your league, he's already on waivers. And there's a stigma to that. People don't like to trade for guys that you just bought off of waivers. They'll get real antsy about it and they'll hit you with messages like you just got him for free or you just got him for fab, but it doesn't matter because you have him. But the long and short is, again, the smaller the league, the less value for Kyle Pitts. Josh pointed out that Thursday was only his third game of his last 16 with 3 or more receptions. And you want to use this game to get that headache off of your roster. And so that kind of goes back to maybe don't put the headache on your roster to begin with. Kittle, Bowers, Trey McBride, Travis Kelce, Jake Ferguson are the only 5 tight ends that Josh wants on his team at the moment. Then you have guys like Tucker Kraft, Isaiah Likely, Dalton Kincaid, Pat Freiermuth, Parkinson, who are the next round of like streaming tight ends. He's putting all those guys ahead of Pitts. So again, if you have Pitts, maybe don't cut him like that other guy did. But sorry, I'm reading the comments as I'm doing this, guys. Doing this show by myself is interesting challenges right now. But anyway, if you have Pitts, maybe don't cut him like the other guy did. But once he's already on waivers, I just think that's going to diminish his trade value. For me, I have my cream pick is Jordan Addison. I think it's a good idea to attack teams on bye weeks. Jordan Addison did not have a great week this week, but don't let the bad stat line fool you. He had 8 targets, and it was an ugly game from Sam Darnold. Minnesota's on bye. If you can stomach a bye week, 72 yards and a touchdown is what Addison put up in week 4. He's the wide receiver 67 on the season, which is what's going to make him the ability to buy. But he's actually the wide receiver 39 in points per game. He is a borderline wide receiver 3, and there is still upside with Jordan Addison. We were worried initially about could Sam Darnold support one wide receiver. Jalen Naylor scored touchdowns in each of the first 3 weeks, and Naylor was a non-factor in this game. I know this because his yardage over-under was like 12, and so I threw a little bit of money on it. My man did not catch a ball, and I don't think he actually had a single target. This team is Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison's team. Obviously, there's going to be some worry when TJ Hawkinson's back in the building. But again, when you look at the wide receivers, the pecking order is very clear. I'm buying Jordan Addison, and I am selling Rhamondre Stevenson. He just did you the biggest favor ever having this week. They've mentioned benching him. That's not good. And while all seems well this week, what happens when he puts the ball on the turf again? And now he's hurt. Now he's dealing with an injury, and they hope it's not a long-term thing. They hope it's a short-term thing. But the fact of the matter is this: he just gave you a 14-ish point week that you can use to sell him. I'm doing it. Gibson still had 6 carries for 52 yards in this game. He was way more efficient. Yes, backup running backs are supposed to be more efficient. But the fact of the matter is this: don't forget what he did to you the last 2 weeks. We've dealt with a negative week from Rhamondre Stevenson. We've dealt with like a 0 the following week from Rhamondre Stevenson. Don't let this one good week convince you. We hold on to our priors for so long. I have Rhamondre in a bunch of leagues because of my priors. I am convincing myself, I am physically telling myself I need to trade Rhamondre Stevenson this week. So when I get off of the show, it's probably going to be to send Rhamondre Stevenson offers out. Smitty doesn't agree. He's fine. Is he? If you're saying injury-wise he's fine, that's okay. But the fact of the matter is this: he's putting the ball on the turf. That's an issue in any Patriots culture. This is still the same Patriots culture. Not that Antonio Gibson is better at protecting the football. But like I said, they're talking about benching him. You don't talk about benching a guy and then, well, he's the whole offense because the offense sucks. Again, I'm going to stick to my guns here. I'm trading Rhamondre Stevenson this week. He gave you an out. Take that out. That's the way I look at it. I agree. He is the whole offense, but that's more of a negative to the Patriots offense than it is. No, he didn't fumble again. I'm just saying if he does fumble again, what happens next? That's the thing that I would be far more worried about is what happens next. Sorry, my questions are all still started here. Somebody says, what do we think about Dell now that Nico has the hammy issue? Yeah, you have to expect that Tank Dell's going to go up. I talked about this last year. Tank Dell, though, nowhere near the size of Nico Collins. They almost play the same role. It was kind of befuddling last year, where we thought Tank Dell was going to be the slot wide receiver, but they were throwing him 50-50 balls the entire time. So the long and short of it is this offense isn't going to change much with Tank Dell now. It's going to shift, or excuse me, if Nico Collins has to miss time, it's going to shift to Tank Dell taking those deep routes. Clearly that has worked out fantastic for fantasy. And I think that's something you need to take advantage of. So yes, Tank Dell has to be going up, and I think he's going to play a role similar to Nico Collins. We know CJ Stroud likes the kid. It's just Collins and Diggs are better, and so now there's going to be a room for him. This is explaining. He had to pick 2 between Chase Brown, Akers, and Tracy, and rolled the dice with Tracy. What a great fucking roll. Again, not the best fantasy week. Running back 17 right now because he didn't find the end zone. The thing is, this kid's a converted wide receiver. Think Antonio Gibson. This kid's a converted wide receiver. Hopefully we can see them get him more involved in the passing game. Only 1 target for 1 yard this week. Millie says it was just another mediocre day for him. Yeah, I had a better week than I normally do. But hey, your Falcons pulled it out on Thursday night. It's not all bad. And I think this is a great question. Do you sell high on Kyler and try to get love? If Kyler doesn't get that 60-yard touchdown, it's a bad week. My thoughts exactly. And again, that was the first play of the game. Kyler's day was saved like on the first fucking play. You're going to need to make this move. I like Jordan Love. Obviously, it wasn't the best week. Way more turnovers out of Jordan Love than what I would expect to see. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle the Romeo Doubs situation. Conduct detrimental to the team is not one you want to see next to any of your star players. He needs his receivers is what I'm trying to get at here. They were able to shut Dontavian Wicks down. There's a reason Dontavian Wicks is a 4th-string wide receiver. Defenses can take him out of the game. They were not able to shut Jaden Reed down. I would make this trade. If you can get Love for Kyler, I've been Love over Kyler this entire season anyway. So I would go ahead, and Joe Ortiz says he's buying Rhamondre Stevenson. I'm fine with that. And then the second TD carry proves he has something to prove. I don't disagree with any of these things. What I do disagree with is this team is shit, and we've gotten bad weeks out of him. 1 week of threatening to be benched can't erase that he did not look good, and the offense did not look good in the previous week. So I'm still going to hold still on selling Rhamondre Stevenson. You guys aren't going to talk me out of my own take. Now it's time for the title card of the show. Chill the fuck out. All of you guys loving on Rhamondre Stevenson. No, I'm joking. This is the dud that was merely just a blip on the schedule, and Josh wants to talk about Marvin Harrison. We knew this was not a great matchup, even though me and Joe said the 49ers can't stop the pass. Josh warned us that it was not going to be a great week for Marvin Harrison. He wants you guys to temper your expectations. In fantasy, he's more of a wide receiver too, But Michael Wilson has kind of just surprised everybody at the moment. Marvin Harrison, we know, is a more talented wide receiver than Michael Wilson. You're going to see this get better in the future. So we're not panic on Marvin Harrison. We're not trying to sell him right now. You don't sell guys after bad weeks. And for me, I'm actually going to go with Dalton Kincaid. I talked about that Buffalo game. He actually tied for the team lead in targets. Houston is very good against the tight end. Those who are expecting a good week out of Dalton Kincaid, again, to Josh's point, you pay a little bit more attention. They are allowing the fourth fewest points to tight ends on the season. You need to chase the volume. He has 22 targets and at least 30 yards in each of his last 4 games. So over 5 targets per game, over 30 yards per game. That's the kind of shit you want to buy into when it comes to fantasy tight ends right now. So I don't remember. I want to go back to Josh's list. I don't remember where Kincaid was or if Kincaid fell on Josh's Kyle Pitts list. So Kincaid fell in Josh's streaming group, and that's kind of where I would put him as well. But I think Kincaid is a guy who has a chance to jump up to that second group, sheerly based on target volume. We saw the target volume even when Khalil Shakir was playing. Now, again, we joked about this earlier in the show. If Davante Adams ends up in Buffalo, all of a sudden that kind of maybe changes my thinking here, because you don't know what's going to happen with the target volume once Davante Adams ends up on a team. In the teams that he's being rumored to, the Saints, we don't know what they look like this week. But again, you have this young wide receiver 1 target hog, and now he's sharing with Davante Adams. The Jets, you have this young wide receiver 1 target hog, and now he's sharing with Davante Adams. Whereas in Buffalo, Adams, someone said in the chat earlier that Keon Coleman can be the 1 while Adams is the 2. I don't know if they're going to see it that way. And I think Adams is going to give Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs vibes. And so I think we could see a heavy target share. For fantasy football purposes, Buffalo might be the only landing spot for Davante Adams that I'm even remotely pleased with. But it might scare me off of Dalton Kincaid just a little bit. I see what Jay did here. He wrote in the bright red section that I was not going to do for the show today. So Jay wants to know, cocktail or mocktail, how do we feel about Trevor Lawrence? 371 yards, 2 touchdowns, first game this season with 19 plus fantasy points. I'm going to call Trevor Lawrence a mocktail. I don't think he's going to be able to do top 10 numbers every single week. He doesn't get to play Indianapolis every single week. You're seeing better things out of his wide receivers, but I still think Trevor Lawrence is a streaming quarterback at best. He actually made the streaming list this week because he's not even rostered in 50% of leagues. Tank Dell on the season, 13 for 21, 13 catches, 137 yards. He's the wide receiver 72. I'm going to call that a cocktail, meaning I think he's going to get better based on what we talked about. Nico Collins dealing with an injury. I think we could see better Tank Dell as the week's going. And then Joe Flacco, should the Colts keep starting him? Absolutely. But I am an Anthony Richardson hater, and they're not going to keep starting him. So Joe Flacco is a mocktail. If there's any trade value in your league right now for Joe Flacco, trade Joe Flacco. And people might not want to hear me say this, trade Michael Pittman and Josh Downs as well. Because the fact of the matter is this offense is different when Anthony Richardson is running it. What I did find interesting is Joe Flacco was throwing those Hail Mary 50-50 balls that Anthony Richardson was throwing. But the fact of the matter is Joe Flacco can put a little bit of touch on those balls. And that's something we've never seen from Anthony Richardson. So the balls were falling where they were supposed to instead of sailing 10 yards over the wide receiver's head, because Anthony Richardson throws the ball as hard as he can on every single play. Millie said it was good to see Dallas actually use Dowdle. That's something I've been saying for the last couple of weeks is Dowdle is the lead back there, whether you want to buy into it or not. Didn't look great last night. It didn't look bad. Don't get me wrong. But it's also a tougher defense. If he's going to be the full-time guy, Dowdle's out there. He was out there in far too many leagues. He actually made the waiver show last week. So I would say keep an eye out for Rico Dowdle on your waivers if he's out there, because I don't need starting running backs on waivers. Leo the Leak wants to know, should we trade Nico Collins for Chase in a dynasty keeper league as quickly as possible? I love Nico Collins, but the fact of the matter is there's far more competition for targets, and Jamar Chase is a truly elite wide receiver who is tied to an elite quarterback. I'm not saying Nico Collins isn't that, but Nico Collins had longer to Jamar Chase has been doing it since season 1. Jamar Chase has, 10 plus 60-yard touchdowns. Nico Collins is fun. Jamar Chase is him. We're talking about a top 3 guy, and the fact of the matter is this as well. 2 years down the road, there's going to be more trade value for Jamar Chase than there is for Nico Collins if you end up having to move off of one of these guys. I want Jamar Chase. Now you have Nico Collins dealing with the injury. You probably want Jamar Chase for this season. I'm making that trade as quickly as possible. Guys, told you it was going to be a quick show. 45 minutes of hearing my voice. I'm sure everybody's ready for this show to be over anyway. Let me get the banner up here. If you guys have not signed up for Underdog yet, You can sign up using the promo code WOFF, and you will get a free pick and a deposit match up to $1,000 in bonus cash. I believe they match half of your initial deposit. With the Monday Night Football game, we have New Orleans taking on Kansas City in Kansas City. Kansas City is a 5.5-point favorite. The over-under on this game is 43.5. And what we do every week is we each give you a pick from the Underdog. So you can go on there and bet 3 of these, and I believe it's 6 times as your money. I have $5 on it right now because I'm a cheap bastard, and I know one of us is going to screw this up anyway. But I do like these picks. Josh is 2-4 on the season. Xavier Worthy higher than 48.5 total yards, rushing and receiving. So Xavier Worthy higher than 48.5 total yards. He's the wide receiver 1. It's time for him to prove it. I like this pick out of Josh. For me, I took Derek Carr higher than 208.5, and there's 2 reasons I like this. If you go to any book right now, his over-under line is actually 211.5. So to find this at 208, unless it went up overnight, to find this at 208 is great. He's actually beat this number twice this season and almost had another one at 200 yards. He's going to have to throw a lot, I believe, in this game. The over-under of 45.5 or 43.5 means it should be a decently scoring game. Kansas City is allowing 235 yards in every quarterback, but a hurt Justin Herbert has beat this number. So Derek Carr higher than 208.5, and Gator throws in again. We're expecting better from this Chiefs offense now. Travis Kelce higher than 5.5 receptions with no Rashee Rice, no Hollywood. It's got to have to be Kelce time. New Orleans has given up 11 catches to Dallas Goedert and then went 6 for 6 to Luke Schoonmaker the other night. So these are things that New Orleans gives up. It's okay to go ahead and bet on those things. So again, if you guys have not signed up for Women in Fantasy, or excuse me, for Underdog yet, use that promo code. Get some free shit there. Let me take a look at these comments before I do my outro here. Okay, I think we're good. Joe said, thanks, Josh, for a great show. And I assume he meant because Josh isn't here. It was a great show because you guys just had to listen to me ramble for 45 minutes. And then he said, he's just waking and baking, doesn't know who's doing the talking. Guys, we very much appreciate you guys for tuning in. It's probably going to be me by myself again tomorrow. Next week, we should start to get our Hurricane folks back, and it'll be a little bit more well-rounded show instead of you guys just listening to me talk fast as hell for 45 minutes. But we appreciate every one of you guys for tuning in. If this is your first time watching Club Fantasy, it's usually a way more interesting show, and there's usually way more voices to disagree with the shit I'm saying instead of me just rambling for 45 minutes. So I encourage you, hit that subscribe button, look out for our other shows. We'll be live again tomorrow, but then Wednesday we do a weekly show. Josh has the whole list of shows we have in here. Tuesdays, we have our trade block show Tuesday night where we're just discuss dynasty trades. That's with Dusty, Joel, and Hoove. Wednesday, our flagship show. But then even after that, we have a Women Fantasy Cleat Dreams where we recap the previous week's top 5 players. DFS shows start Thursday. Oh, Captain, My Captain with Austin. And then Friday morning, you also have DFS Academy with myself and Austin. But we also have the Sneaky Flex. If you guys have never tuned in on Thursday night, that's Wendy and the Sneaky Girls, Rowan and Maisie, answering start-sit questions for 15 minutes. It's probably going to be the best part of your week. And if we don't see you on that show, we do a start-sit show for a full hour on Saturdays. And of course, this show is going to be back next Monday. Thank you guys for riding with me today. Hope you guys have a wonderful Monday. Hope you get your Monday miracles. Have a great night. I'm going to set this outro video. Oh, it won't even let me set the outro video. What is going on? All right, guys. Have a good night.